everybody and welcome back to Rocco Baby Crochet. Hope you've all had a great week. So this week's free pattern, we're making this really fun little cowl which is perfect for this time of year when you're out and about doing your Christmas shopping, keep you nice and cozy. Super simple pattern to do. We've got the majority of it in a granny stripe and then I finished it off with a little bit of ribbon and added a silver button up here to tie it together. So as long as your button is slightly larger than two of the clusters of the granny stitch, then that will work perfectly. And this one that I'm wearing now is made out of Stylecraft Special Aran with wool in the colour Grey Jazz. In the tutorial I'm using the same brand, so again it's the Stylecraft Special Aran with wool, but it's in the colour Dijon. You're also going to want to grab yourself two crochet hooks, a 5mm and a 6mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a darning needle, a tape measure, and as always, if you feel more confident using stitch markers, grab a couple of stitch markers just to mark your first and your last stitch of every row, making sure that you keep that lovely straight edge. As always, this tutorial is supported by a free written pattern which is available over on my blog, and there's a link to that popping up for you. So if you do prefer a written pattern, then head on over there and you'll find all the details that you need. Please don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell notification if you don't want to miss out on next week's free pattern, and it would really help in supporting the channel too. So let's get into making our cowl. In our cowl, we're going to start by making a foundation chain. Just to let you know that the finished cowl will measure 36 inches in length and 10 inches in width. So we're going to begin by making a foundation chain. It's important when you're making this foundation chain that you keep your chains nice and loose. So you want to begin by making a slip knot, popping that onto your hook, making sure you've got a nice amount of loose end just to weave in at the end. And we're going to begin by chaining 38. So you're going to yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, a total of 38 times. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37 and 38. So for row 1, what we want to do is a row of double crochets. So you can work this a couple of different ways. So you can do it where you're working your stitches into the front of your chain and just popping it underneath there. But I always prefer to work into the back loops of my chains, which are these lines that just run down the middle of your chains on the back, and when you turn it to the side you can see those bumps, and that's where I work my stitches. So we're going to begin by placing a double crochet. Remember, I use UK terminology, so US terminology, that's a single crochet just into the second chain from the hook. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both loops, and you're going to do that all the way across. Don't forget to place a stitch marker in that very first double crochet that you've just made so that you don't lose any of your stitches. And at the end of this you should have a total of 37 double crochets. So if you want to make your way across, and when you've come to the end of row 1, come back to me and we'll move up to row 2. So I've just completed row 1 and I've got my row of double crochets going all the way across. So to move up to row 2, what we want to do is we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and this chain 3 counts as a stitch here and throughout the pattern, and turn your work. So into this very first stitch here at the bottom of our chain 3, we're going to work a treble crochet. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So what you might want to do is pop your stitch marker into the top of your chain 3 before you go any further, if you find it easier to mark them off. So you don't lose it and you keep your edges nice and straight. So then what we're going to do is we're going to start forming the granny stripe. So what you want to do is skip the next 2 stitches, and into the 3rd stitch we're going to place a cluster of 3 treble crochets. So you're going to yarn over, skip 2 stitches, place your hook into the 3rd stitch, yarn over, pulling up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So there's 1, then you're going to go back into the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2, and then back into the stitch for the 3rd time and place your 3rd treble crochet. So we're just going to repeat that 10 times going across the base of row 1. So I'm going to skip 2 stitches, into the 3rd I'm going to place my 3 treble crochets. So that's 2 and 3, skip 2, and then into the 3rd place 3 trebles, 1, 2 and 3. Don't forget, in the US these will be doubles, so I use UK terminology. Skip 2 stitches and into the 3rd place 3 treble crochets, 1, 2 and 3, skip 2 and into the 3rd place my cluster of 3 trebles, skip 2, and again we're placing the cluster there into the 3rd stitch, so you're placing your 3 trebles into that 3rd one, skip 2, and then place your next cluster, skip 2, another set of 3 trebles, so that's 1, 2 and 3, skip 2 again, and then another set of 3, 1, 2, 3 trebles, skip another 2, into the 3rd 3 more trebles, 2 and 3, skip 2, place 3 trebles into the 3rd, 1, 2 and 3, and then you should have 3 stitches left. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip those 2 as usual, but into this last one, instead of placing 3, we're just going to place 2 trebles. So it's the same as what we did at the beginning. So we've got the chain 3 that counts as 1 treble, and then we placed a 2nd treble in that first stitch. So on our last stitch, instead of doing a cluster of 3, we just place the 2 trebles into that last stitch. So moving on up to row 3 now, and from here this is going to be a 2-row repeat of rows 3 and 4. So you're going to chain 3 and turn. Again, that's counting as a stitch, and what we're going to do is we're not working into the top of stitches for this row, we're going to be working into the gaps between these clusters. So yarn over your hook, insert your hook into that space from the row below, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2, 1, 2 and 3. Move on to your next space between your clusters and place another 3 trebles, 1, 2 and 3. Then move over to this next gap, place another 3 trebles, and you're going to do that all the way across. And when you come towards the end of this row, if you want to come back to me. So press pause now, and when you've made your way across, I'll just show you how I finish off this row and move up to the next. So I've got one space left in between this cluster of 3 and my 2 at the end, so I'm going to place a cluster of 3 trebles into that space, 1, 2 and 3, and then to finish off round 1 I'm going to place 1 treble crochet into the top of this chain 3. So to move on to row 4, you go into chain 3. Again, that will always count as a stitch, so don't forget to be moving your stitch markers up. And into this first stitch we're going to place 1 treble crochet. So in total at the beginning of row 4 we have got the 2 stitches there. So don't forget, it's the top of the chain 3 where you're placing your stitch marker if you're using them. And then what you want to do is move on across to this gap here and place your first cluster of 3 trebles into that gap. So 1, 2 and 3, and then move on to your next gap exactly how we did in row 3, and in each of the gaps along you're going to place a cluster of 3 trebles. So if you want to make your way along row 4, and I will show you how I finish that. So if you hit pause and come back to me when you're coming up to the end of row 4. Okay, so I've come to my last gap space and I am going to place my cluster of 3 trebles into that one. There's my 3. And then what we want to do is into the top of this chain 3 we are going to place 2 treble crochets. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook underneath the top of that chain 3, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and you're just going to do that twice. So that is your 2 row repeat. We're going to be repeating rows 3 and 4 up until row 60 of the pattern. So let me show you how I make my ribbing on this, and this is where you're going to want to change your hook size. So I like to go up a hook size just so it doesn't draw my scarf in any at all. And so you're going to grab your 6mm crochet hook. So to do the ribbing, what you're going to do is chain 1 and turn your work, and we're just going to place 1/2 treble crochet in every stitch across for a total of 37 stitches. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into that very first stitch. The chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch in the edging, it's just a turning chain. Yarn over and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3, and then move into your next stitch along and place another 1/2 treble. Remember US, these will be half doubles, and you work all the way across and you should have a total of 37 1/2 trebles. Don't forget to pop your stitch marker in that very first stitch, just to make it a little bit easier for you. So if you want to hit pause while you make your way across and come back to me when you've got your 37 1/2 trebles. So I've just got 2 1/2 trebles left to work, and that is row 61 completed. My last 1/2 treble is going into the top of the chain 3 from row 60. And then what we're going to do is for row 62 you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. Again, that chain 1 does not count as any stitch, it's just a turning chain for this part of the pattern. Now to make the ribbing effect, so we can see, let me just zoom in on this a little bit for you. So let's look at what makes up our stitches. So let's move this out of the way a little bit for you. So when we look at this at the top of our stitches, this one here is the back loop, so it's the loop that's furthest away from you. This one here is your front loop, and then if you turn your work onto its side, you should see these loops that are going along the side here. These are known as the third loop, and that is what we're going to be working into to create the ribbed effect. So that's where we're going to be popping our hook. for row 62. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be placing a slip stitch in each of those third loops. Now it is important that you keep your slip stitches nice and loose, or else it's going to draw and pull your scarf together. So you want to insert your hook underneath that third loop, and once you've done a couple you'll find that your work naturally turns, so they're more obvious. So insert your hook into the loop, yarn over, pulling up, drawing up a loop, pull it nice and tall, and then slip it off. So when I'm doing loose slip stitches, so insert it into the third hook again, pull it up nice and tall, I usually sort of maneuver my hook so I know that the slip stitch is the same width. So it's different to how I would normally do a slip stitch if I was finishing off a pattern. I kind of pull it up, rotate my hook a bit, making sure that it's the same width as my stitch, and then drop it off. And then move on to the next one. Don't forget, you will probably benefit from using your stitch markers here in your first and your last slip stitch, and you're just going to work your way all the way across, just placing one slip stitch in the third loop of every half treble as you go along for row 62. So if you work your way across, press pause and come back to me when you're ready to move up to row 63. So I've just got 2 slip stitches left to work, so let me just place those in. 1 and 2. So to move up to the next row, which for you will be row number 63, you're going to chain 1 and turn. Again, we're not counting that as a stitch, and you can already see that we've got this ribbon forming and it looks really pretty. So what we want to do is we're going to be placing half treble crochets into the back loops of these slip stitches. So the back loop is, if you look at your work from the top, you can see the V's that we've just made with all of our slip stitches, slightly pointing towards the back of your work a little bit. So it's this loop here that we're going to be working under and placing back loop half treble crochets, UK terminology, back loop half double crochets, US terminology. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the centre of that slip stitch and push underneath the back loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, take off all 3. Move on to your next slip stitch, insert your hook into the centre of that stitch, pushing through the back loop, place another half treble, and you're just going to go all the way across until you've got 37 back loop half treble crochets. So this is why you really do want to do your slip stitching nice and loose. So not only if you do it too tightly, not only will it change the shape of your scarf, it'll draw it narrower, but it will also be an absolute nightmare to work into the backs of these stitches if they are too tight. So if you make your way across, placing back loop half trebles all the way across, and when you've done that we'll move up to the next row together. Okay, so I've got 2 back loop half trebles to place, and that is that row completed for me, and I'm just going to chain 1 and turn. So for row 64, what you're going to do is work your way across, and we're going to place slip stitches into that third loop again. So keep your stitches nice and loose, insert your hook underneath that third loop, yarn over, pulling up a loop, pull it nice and tall, and then just drop it off your hook. Move into your next stitch and do the same, and you're just going to slip stitch into that third loop for a total of 37 times all the way across. So when you're coming to the end of that, if you want to hit pause now, and when you're finishing up this row, come back to me and we'll move up to our next row. So I am at my last 2 slip stitches of this row. So to move up to row 65, what we're going to do is we're just going to chain one, and just like we did previously, we're going to work back loop half treble crochets all the way across. Again, you should have a total of 37 stitches. So yarn over, pop your hook into the center of that stitch, pushing underneath the back loop, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. Move on to your next stitch, and you're going to do that again in total for 37 stitches. Don't forget, keep a track of your stitches with your stitch markers if you find that easier. And if you press pause now and come back to me when you're finishing up row 65, we'll move on to row 66 together. So I've just placed my last back loop only half treble crochet of row 65, or what will be your row 65, and I'm going to chain one and turn, and this will be your row 66. And what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch all the way across into that 3rd loop only for a total of 37 slip stitches. Keep it nice and loose. This is a project that you will probably have to block. I've not blocked my grey one yet, but I will do before I wear it. I wasn't actually going to use this yarn for this scarf, but I think it looks lovely, so I think I'm going to do myself another one in this colour. Once I finish this tutorial today, that might be my afternoon little job for myself. I think it'd look really lovely completed up as a cowl. So if you want to press pause while you work your way across, slip stitching into every 3rd loop, then come back to me and we'll work our final row together, and then we'll do button positioning, and then you're good to go. So I've just placed my last slip stitch into the 3rd loop of row 66, and I'm going to chain one and turn, and what will be your row 67 is going to be your last row, and all we're going to do is work all the way across this, placing a back loop only double crochet. So UK terminology, it's a double crochet. In the US, these are singles. So just like you did previously, you're inserting your hook into the center of the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on your hook this time, yarn over and pull through both of those. Move on to your next stitch, pop your hook into the center and push underneath that back strand of yarn, yarn over, pulling up a loop, yarn over and pull through both loops. And you're just going to do that in total 37 times. So if you want to make your way across, and when you are finishing up this row, come back to me and we'll just tie it off together, and I'll just talk you through where I positioned my buttons on my cowl. Okay, so I am just placing my very last back loop double crochet, and what I'm going to do is chain one, grab my scissors, cut my yarn, leaving enough of a loose end to weave in, pull up on that chain one, hold it and pull firmly to secure it, and you'll just need to weave in your loose ends. So that is what your ribbon should look like. As you can see, because I've done a ribbed stitch and this is a small swatch, it is pulling in a little bit. So like I said a little bit earlier, I do block these cowls when I make them, just to give them a straighter finish. So once you've blocked it, it'll look more like that for you. So let's have a look at my grey one, and I'll run through where I placed my buttons and how I decided to place them where I placed them. So here's my grey scarf, and as you can see, I angled my button a little bit. So what I did was I put the cowl on in front of the mirror, found where I wanted the button to sit, and I wanted it on a little bit of a slight angle, so that's what I did. And what I did is I put a stitch marker exactly where I wanted the button, and then I came back and I sewed that on. But if you want to place it in the same position as me, then what you want to do is lie your cowl flat, and you want to have it so that the ribbon is facing up, so right side facing upwards, and I placed my button 17.5 centimeters in from the inside edge, and 4.5, almost 5 centimeters down from the long edge. And then this is what your cowl should look like when it is sitting on your neck, around your neck. So I hope you've really enjoyed this tutorial. Please don't forget, hit like, hit subscribe. If you have been making one of these cowls, or if you've been making anything else at all this week and you want to share it with us all, we've got a great Facebook group. So go over there and join that. That would be great. But other than that, happy hooking, and I'll see you next week for next week's free pattern. Take care. Bye.